So about 25% of people that need a kidney transplant and have a donor may not be a match with their recipient because they're incompatible blood types or they have a positive cross-match, meaning they're not compatible. So the concept is that if maybe we could swap donors, maybe everybody could benefit and they could all get living donor transplants. We all know that there are not enough deceased donor kidneys for everybody. The waiting list for a kidney transplant continues to grow every year. And this seems to be one of the unique ways where we can try to reduce the weight load and number of people on the wait list. We have a computer program that we utilize to help us find the swaps. It's a little more complicated than finding people that have the same blood type or compatible blood types. There are several genes that we need to match to make sure that they're compatible. So every time we identify a pair recipient with a potential donor that's not a match for them, we will enter them into this computer database and try to run a swap program to see if there's a possibility of swapping kidneys between these people and if they're compatible. And that's how we start off with it. Of course, there's so much more to it than just that. The exchange has to be somewhat equitable. If one donor is 25 years of age and the other one is 65 years of age, that's not a fair swap. So we try to take factors like that into consideration as well too. There's a lot more concerns, safety and security, as well as confidentiality that we need to look into, of course, to protect both the donor and recipients. Typically, the donor and recipients cannot meet each other until after it's done to take away any chance of bias occurring before the donation happens. So we try to keep that protected. Differential consents have to be performed because now you're not donating to somebody that you love, you're donating to somebody else so that your loved one can get a transplant. So there's an additional layer of altruism that has to occur, and it may change people's minds about whether they want to do this or not, or their motivation to do this. So all of this has to be discussed with them in detail. We have a separate session just to talk to them about paired exchange as opposed to just being a living kidney donor. The donor evaluations are completely private, separated from the recipient evaluations. Therefore, the donor is given every opportunity to understand what they're getting themselves into, what extra this entails, and if they're still as motivated to do this or not. So our priorities are always for the security, safety, and confidentiality of the donor. A living donor kidney is almost always better than a dead person's kidney. It has less chance of complications. It's safer because we know who the donor is. We can do all the time and testing that we need to do to make sure it's safe. Understand that when we do an organ transplant from a dead donor, we don't know everything about that donor. That donor is dead and can't talk to us, and even though the family members are there, they may or may not know everything about that donor. So there's always a risk of some chance of infection or cancer spreading with an organ. And it's rare, but it has occurred, and it's occupational risk of this procedure. With the living donation, that's obviously decreased because we can talk to this person. We have all the time and testing to do that we want to. If we're concerned about something, we can follow up on it. And simply the last reason is that the living donor organ lasts almost twice as long as a dead person's organ. So it's a huge benefit to get a living donor transplant. You have to appeal to the sense of altruism, of course. I mean, these people are already altruistic because they've usually come forward themselves to be a donor, and then they find out they're not compatible. And in that situation, we bring them back to have a separate conversation about them to say, listen, we understand this is not possible that you could donate to your loved one, but would you let us look in to see if maybe you're doing to somebody else that your loved one could get a living donor kidney? And we go through all the, complications that this might entail, but if they're willing and if they need further conversations about this, we have a printed out, pamphlet and information and consent that they get to take home and read over their leisure and get back to us and let us know if they want to participate in this. If they do, then we put them in the exchange program to see if we can do this. Now, there's another program we've also participated in. There is an national kidney exchange program that is going on with UNOS, the United Network of Organ Sharing. So we've been working with them as well too. So we have two systems of where we can put them in, both our local system here as well as the national system. It started off in about 2010 with the pilot program just to see the feasibility of doing this, and they're still working out some kinks, but they've opened it nationally a couple of years ago, and I think there's over 100 transplant programs in the country that are currently participating in this all across the country. But once again, understand this adds an additional layer of complexity to this, because now you've got to talk about logistics of flying a kidney across the country, the time zones, chances that could get wrong with logistics. There's an additional layer of complications there that has to be discussed with the patient as well.